So I lived a pretty simple life, empath, same old story. I give, people pleaser, really care about people. I hit a point in my life where I think it was like mid 20s, grief and a lot of family pain came, and I was already working in mental health at that time. So, and in mental health, there was a lot of depression, sad feelings. I'm listening to it every single day because I'm an empath, right? I can help people. I just have to be present and not let it affect me. And that worked for a while until the family pain came in. And then I also had that at home. And so I didn't get a break from hearing about things like suicide and self-harm and grief and really deep sadness. And I've been a pretty mellow person most of my life, right? So it's like, I have highs and lows, but it had never gone so far to where there was any danger or anything like that. Always a mellow person. I'm always the person that people come to because I can logically and emotionally understand where someone is coming from, and I can put distance between usually sometimes. But we got to a point where I was just listening to it all day. I wasn't paying attention to what kind of music I was listening to, what kind of shows I was watching, all the stories that I was hearing on a regular basis. They would affect me, but in a, regular way, like, oh, damn, that's sad, like, made me cry a little bit. But it didn't feel like I was carrying it until one day, I had a friend and we talked every day and we were really close. And he was acting really weird. And he was like, towards the end of the day, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, I just wished my friend would have remembered that it was my birthday. And it took me back really far, and I was like, oh, wow. And I realized that I was so tapped out, I wasn't really present like I thought I was. I wasn't really here. I wasn't paying attention. And I realized that the pain that it was in my family and at work was affecting me and had affected me way more than I had even realized. Just months prior to that, we lost my brother suddenly in a car accident. And that was on my dad's side of the family. And on my mom's side of the family, they were really struggling with losing my grandma, which, that how that goes. Grandma is a pillar in life. So I had I had grief, deep, deep grief on one side of my family. I'm dealing with mental health issues at work because that's my job. It's what I love. I'm very good at it. And then, bam, you never expect to lose a sibling in that way. And we weren't like the best of friends, but that's my brother. Like, you don't expect to not be able to see your brother. And I didn't realize it affected me the way that it did until that moment with my friend. Forward a little bit, I realized, like, okay, you are grieving. You do have some things going on. And one day, my friends asked me, Kayleisha, do you want to come with us on a road trip to California? And by then, it had become a little more obvious to people who were paying attention that I was pretty sad. I was pretty down. And my friend said, I know you're kind of going through some things. I know you're feeling bad. Would you like to go on this road trip with us? We need a third person to help drive and do this whole thing. And my immediate thought was, no, I don't want to do anything. I would like to just go home and sit and just do nothing. And I love road trips, y'all. Like, a 12-hour drive like here, it's nothing. It like lights up my world. I can't wait to do it. And the fact that my immediate answer was no was like a tiny alarm for me to say, okay, what is that? I feel like I'm being robbed, but I'm the one holding myself at gunpoint. And I took some time and I told my friend, I was like, I really want to say no. I don't want to go. But I know that if I say no, I'll be robbing myself of possible enjoyment that I know I would have otherwise if I wasn't in the state that I'm in. So that's leading up to more, that little awareness. And a few months go by, I think maybe a month or two, and I'm sitting on my bed and I realize that I am making plans. And they're not plans like, oh, in the future. It's like, oh, we're doing these plans. And it sounded really odd because it's like it wasn't my voice. And they were plans to do something that just didn't make sense when I actually realized that the voice wasn't mine and that it was telling me to seriously hurt myself in a way that was, you don't come back from that. And it had to do with me being in the car, which, what sense does that make when your brother died in a car accident? Is there any logic going on here? And once I realized that, oh my gosh, this is not my voice. That's not something that I would ever say. I've been very sad before, but I have never come to that point. And it was like something broke in that moment as soon as I realized that that's not my voice. Because logically, I would never say something like that. It doesn't make sense. And that is when I came into contact with the first pillar, when I realized that self-empathy is, I didn't realize it was called self-empathy, but it's when I really started to realize, damn, I haven't been paying attention to the most important thing in my life, and that is me and how I feel and what I'm doing. And I went on a journey after that. I started to pay more attention. I started to ask more questions of myself. What am I doing? What am I listening to? What am I watching? Why am I watching this? If I'm really paying attention, this is not something that I would like to be listening to on a regular basis. And I went through my social media and I scrubbed everything. I started over. I didn't have TikTok before, but I then got on TikTok and I only listened to people who were talking about self-help, self-love, getting over depression, working on basically the self-help world. I dove into that, and that was the only thing I allowed on my timeline because it was go time. There was no time for me to be lax with myself. The care had to be turned on 100%. There was not there couldn't be a crack of not paying attention. I had to care more than I've ever cared about anything. And that was mostly because I realized I love my family so much. I can't leave. I can't do these things. And in that decision, I realized I had to stop putting them before me. I can't engage in these conversations. I can't hear any more of how hard it has been for you. As terrible as that it felt and sounded to me, I had to stop. I had to walk away from conversations when they started to turn sad or down or went into their stories. And at work, I kind of just went through the motions. I still did my job. I still showed up, but it looked a little bit different after that point because I had to pay more attention. I had to show up differently for them. It was less therapeutic. And because I wasn't a therapist, that was easier to do for me in the job that I was doing. So after a while, I realized, okay, I can look at my life logically and see that there are things to be grateful for. I don't feel like I have anything to be grateful for, though. I don't know what that emotion even is. I can't even reach that point. What even is that? But I can logically see. I have a home. I have healthy mom, healthy dad. I have siblings. I don't have any terrible things going on. I think grief is a normal part of life, right? And I realized that I didn't know how to be grateful. I realized that when I got curious, I realized I didn't know how to be grateful. And so I honestly can't tell you if I learned it from someone or what happened, but I learned through that searching and that being very diligent and strict on what I watched when I looked at my phone. And I saw that three things. There is the soul, which is what we are. There's the body. The body carries that soul and gives it an experience. And then there's the brain. And the brain keeps that body alive so that the soul can have an experience. And I said, oh, so the brain is like a computer that runs this thing. My brain is running the wrong program. I am going to reprogram it on purpose because I care about how I feel. And the only way to do that is to get discipline and give instructions. What do you actually want? I want to be grateful. I want to feel good. There are things here to feel good. I know there are, but I couldn't see it. And so every day, I'm going to assume that it's 3 months. Every day, I wrote 3 things I was grateful for. And if I couldn't remember to write it down, I would say it out loud at the very end of the day. Or like in the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would either write it or I would say it. And in the beginning, it was really hard because I didn't know how to be grateful. So I started off, so it was so embarrassing. It was like, I'm grateful that I remembered that I told myself I was going to do this. I'm grateful I have a notebook to write in. Like, it started so low until I got to the point where I could be grateful that I'm breathing, that I'm able to use my mind. And that is when, that's when I realized it was self-empathy. I said, damn, one day I just was watching my dog in the backyard. And I had the most beautiful experience of connecting with myself and with a God I didn't know at the time, but that's what it was. And I said, damn, this is a new level for me. This is a new space where we're walking into. We're not exactly at self-love yet, but that's when I realized that self-empathy and caring about how you feel is what would actually help people. Because in mental health, I saw nothing but people who didn't feel good. Even the people working in mental health. It wasn't great. It might have even been worse because they just carried the pain and didn't keep shuffling along like I was. And I realized that if more people could hear this message, then maybe the world can start to heal. We can start to do more things and help each other and love each other more. And that is when I started to take some actions that I hadn't really done before. I said, you know what, in my next job, that I want it to be my last job. I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I flipped completely in everything that I thought about. I want love. I do want a partner. I'm tired of saying that I don't want a partner. That's a lie. I'm lying to myself when I say that. I'm just trying to be okay with not having them. And I realized in doing all those things, in taking a moment to say, no, I need to care about how I feel. I can't spend so much time with my family. Even with my friends, it was the same story. And it just hit me one day. I said, wow, this is self-love. Self-love is doing the things to say, dang, I don't care about how I feel. And then the actions started to happen. And I looked back and I said, wow, self-love is the actions that come from embodying those things, from realizing that it was only me that could do it. And that is when I started to create Empathy Empire. And it's almost like it came out of nowhere. I'm not a business mind, y'all. I'm a daydreamer. I was a couch potato, honestly. I would go to work and come home, and that was really it. And I could see where I had failed myself in so many ways, and where I actually started to love myself through actions because I realized that I didn't care. And after a while of building Empathy Empire, going online, and trying to spread the message as best as I could, I met people. I made friends who were conscious. They were more aware than I was, or just as aware as I was. And I realized the magnetism in that, and that like actually does attract like. And I looked back, and there was a moment when I realized, like, oh, I keep attracting guys who are emotionally unavailable. Like, what is going on? And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my fucking God, I'm emotionally unavailable. I was so embarrassed because how dare they not let me in? how it's so embarrassing. Because I'm looking at them like, what is wrong with you? Why would you not open up to me? That doesn't make sense. Whole time I'm like behind a trapped like steel door, like with like barbed wires and like spiky things poking out. And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, you have to drop blood in to like even get started in the system. It's like, I don't understand why you're not. What's going on? And so I had that realization, and one day I was sitting down and I said, okay, I want a partner. I want a partner who's like conscious and like understands spirit, because it doesn't make sense for me to have someone who doesn't, when this is life. Like, this is real. If they're unaware of that, then what are they doing? I have no idea. We'll be on two different levels. And I love to grow. I love to grow myself. Self-development is something that's very important to me. And so I realized, like, okay, I want someone who I can learn from. They can learn from me. I have to be attracted to them, because I've tried that before. It's okay to not be fully attracted. So that's a lie. Why would you not want to be attracted to the person you're with? And it does. It's perfect, but I couldn't. And that's usually how it goes. And so I realized that, and I was like, okay, so I want somebody who I can learn from. They can learn from me. They know about consciousness and awareness. They take care of their bodies. I'm attracted to them. Okay. And then I was like, dang, am I a match to that thing? Do I even match that? I was like, I gotta get in the gym. And I did. I got into HOTWORX, and I was doing Pilates and yoga, and I was meditating regularly. And I magnetized people who they understood consciousness and awareness, but they weren't quite it. Mm-hmm. And I had to take those experiences and apply my gratitude to it and say, wow. Almost like when you order food and you're like, I didn't want my steak cooked like this. Can you maybe go cook it how I actually want it? And you send it back. And you wait for your steak to arrive. And you're like, oh, well, I wanted white rice. I didn't want brown rice. So you send it back. And that happened that happened twice. Thank you. I thought of it the other day. And that happened a couple of times, and I was like, okay, all right, my person is coming. Maybe I'm being a little too needy here, because that was one of the themes I was coming across, a little bit of neediness. And I was like, okay, there's some neediness going on in me. And I ended up in a really great situationship that I'm thinking, if I wasn't so aware, I would have exactly. It was a no-no. And my ego loved it. It was a perfect situation. We just matched. And I think he said something one day that actually triggered me. And he was like, we have forever. I was like, oh, fuck. Because you're wild as hell for saying that. Yeah, I was like, I gotta go. And there was a really intense relationship that I had when I first had my awakening experience. And I thought that was the peak experience, but it didn't work out. I fell into the twin flame love story, and we're just going back and forth. That's all it is. And my friend, she'd never done tarot before, and she was practicing. She was like, can I read for you? And I was like, yeah. And she did a reading, and she said, she's like, I don't know, there's something that you're holding on to that you're not letting go of. And I was like, damn, I know exactly what it is. And I was still believing that the love that I had shared with this person, not the situationship, but this other person that we had already moved on from each other. I believed that the love that we had was between us. He loved me, I loved him. No, you can only experience the love that is coming from you. And I knew that logically, but there was still that little piece of me in the back of my mind that was like, yeah, but he could still come back one day because whatever reason I could insert there. And I just released the feeling that anything that I feel comes from outside of me. I just released it. I let it go. And I told my situationship guy, I said, you're amazing. And it makes sense that someone would wait for you. He had just gotten out of a relationship, so he didn't want to rush into anything, which I totally understand. And I said, but I'm also someone who is worth taking advantage of now, because you don't meet someone like me just anywhere at just any time. So I'm going to go because my person is actually waiting for me. And I left that situation. And he, honestly, I do think he loved me because he let me walk away. If he had done anything other than that, I probably would have stayed. And I after that, I was like, okay. I was like, dang. I was like, if I had to go through all these things and these lessons, these really deep-rooted lessons, if like attracts like, my person is going through some shit. They got a backpack full of just shit. So it might take them some time to get here. I was like, dang, probably at the end of this life or in the next life. But I know that they exist because I can feel them. I shit you not. A week later, Joshua and I met online. And it just took off from there. And I really had to, honestly, I didn't have to do anything. It came so naturally to get into the flow of us and let things just be what they were. It was effortless, and not in a airy fairy kind of way, in a just a big sigh of like when you get home from a long day of work. Not that he felt like home, but I was just at peace with my own life and where I was emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And exactly. Yeah, like that. Like when you get a massage and you like make those noises like yeah, exactly. She's like telling you through interpretive ways. And what? We were like a month or two in and Josh's truck gets taken away. Okay, that's great. This guy lives a crazy life. Okay. And, we're still talking, whatever. He goes back to Ohio. I always love when I can actually tell this story because he tells it so awful. He makes it seem like he just got off the road and I was there and he was like, no.
Tell the truth.
Yeah. And then he was home. He was home in Ohio. And then you were traveling. Oh, no, he was traveling back home to Ohio. Y'all, why did this man lose everything on the Greyhound?
ID.
All his clothes, his IDs, his laptop, his notebooks, his books. I'm like, that's weird. And even before that, his truck being taken was like so random because he was supposed to go to jail and he didn't. And he was like, yeah, I think the guy was on drugs involved. I'm like, what is going on with this man? This is a crazy life that he is living, seriously. And then he loses the bags and I'm like, what's going on? My car gets broken into. I'm like, something is going on here. And he goes back home to Ohio and we're like FaceTiming. We're like, dang, I miss you, blah, blah, blah. And I had already planned a trip with my sisters to celebrate. My sister and I have a very close birthday. We're Libras. And I got a free trip. I was getting free trips and things were just going crazy in my life. Yeah, period. And I had picked a random place. It was so random. I was like, oh yeah, I've never been to anything like that. So we're on my birthday trip in the Smoky Mountains. And Josh and my sisters are like, because I clearly wanted Josh to be there. I was like, I would love for him to be here for my birthday. Like, that would just be the coolest thing. And my sisters are like, you should have him here. Like, it's your birthday. Like, you can do whatever you want. This man jumps on a Greyhound to come be with me for my birthday. And he drives me and my sisters home. And he never leaves. And we have just been together ever since. And that's when I actually started the third pillar, but I didn't realize it until just a few months ago. And it really hit me when after just a few months of us being together, my health declined rapidly. And doctors had already diagnosed me with scoliosis, and pretty severe for my age, because I have no idea. I thought I just had bad posture and was like a little, slouch goblin is what I thought. And my health had gotten so bad that it was hard for me to walk. I would cry just from moving. And Josh couldn't find a regular job to save his damn life. He was working like odd jobs and I was working, so it was fine. But it was like, this guy's weird. And he was like, I was like, if you just do these things, and he's like, it won't work. I was like, what do you mean? It won't work. So then when my health declines, I was like, oh my God. I was like, I have to quit this job. I have to quit. And I remembered that I told myself that job was going to be the last time I had worked for someone. And that is really when we started the thinking process of what Empathy Empire would look like. And there was nothing but failure and mistakes for a couple years after that, until we moved to Ohio to try to do a business adventure. Venture, not adventure, but it was an adventure. And that is when we started doing the group meditations online, and that's when we met Dana. So we met Daniel when we were in a pretty crazy part of our life. And that failed epically. And this whole time, y'all, self-trust was just running in the background, because what else was there but to do the thing I said I wanted to do, to show up how I said I wanted to show up. Now was the time to do it. There was no later. There was no, well, let me just prepare. The moment is now. And that's all that there is. And when the opportunity presents itself, you have to either open the door or sit there and cry on the other side in pain, because you know what that is. And it has been nothing but that since Ohio, and we found out we were pregnant and didn't have any money. We had made a list of what we were going to do to figure it out. We had wrote a list, whether it made sense logically or not, whether we could do it or not. And then at the end, we crossed out the things that, if you just think about the little bit, that's not going to work. That's not happening. And on that list, we had 2 things that we were going back to Kansas with. And it was food stamps and God. We got back to Kansas and we did not get no food stamps. And all we had was God and each other, and just the belief and knowledge that we had that something good is coming from this, because what else is there? And only recently I realized that self-trust has been my hardest journey. It's been probably the longest. And since me and Josh got together, it's the only thing that I have been doing, because I hadn't been in a long, serious relationship. So I had to trust myself and Josh and God in that area. I had never not worked a job, if not 2 or 3 jobs, and knew exactly where my money was coming from. So I had to have trust that we would figure it out, that I would figure out that I would be okay, and that God's doing something. And I realized one of the boot camps that people were starting to feel better, and that manifestations do come, but you have to not give up. You have to not stop. You have to actually believe that it's going to happen, and you just keep moving. You keep moving through that belief, because I went from depression and wanting to hurt myself to building a family and a business with someone that only God could have sent for me, because y'all, this man was made for me, let me tell you. And I realized, damn, self-trust has been really hard for me. But I am trucking through that bitch, because I am so much stronger. And it's just thoughts and things and the mind that keeps me back from doing anything that I want to do. You cannot tell me that you can't do the things that you say that you want to do, because there's even more than that, even more than you can even think of. I would have never thought of this. And so when y'all tell me that your lives have changed, even in the slightest degree, my mind is blown, because there's no way that we did this. This came through us. We just had to move out of the way, but also keep moving at the same time. And so the 3 pillars I am realizing are just phases of life that we go through. They're not exactly in order. And once you're done going through them once, be prepared to go through them again, because they are just as deep and complex as we are. And that is what we are learning here at Empathy Empire. That's what we're teaching. That's what we're spreading, because I know that people can feel better. It's not complex. It's very simple. But if you do it with people, it's not as hard and scary and complex as it seems. It's doable. It's actually already done. And we just have to believe it. You have to then move into knowing it. And that knowing is self-trust. Because that's trusting you and that's trusting God. God didn't make you so that you could just not do the things that you see in your mind. You see those things for a reason. You have those wants and those desires for a reason. You have those aspirations for a reason. And you can see them because they are real. The power that you have behind the things that come into your mind is unfathomable. And once we tap into that, y'all, the light that comes through a person that knows God is moving things for them, or even better, that they are moving things for God, then there's not really anything that you need to be scared of. Whether that's dreaming or doing or feeling. She's probably hungry. And so the 3 pillars are probably the basis of what Empathy Empire is. But I had to go through the lessons to realize that that's what God was trying to teach me first before I could really send that message to anybody else. And I'm just seeing that I am just a tool being used. And I'm grateful for the journey. And I'm grateful for y'all for being here, for allowing me the blessing and to be able to experience this level of gratitude. I am just flying high. You can't really tear me down. Even if Josh and I have a fight, I'm like, it doesn't even fucking matter because it's always working out for me. And this too is good. Because y'all, you can't make it up. You can't. I literally could not make this up. When Josh and I would do the dream exercise where he has you write as much as you could, y'all, my dream went as far as like, I'm gonna fix the bathroom. I'm gonna get us a new kitchen. Now I'm like, oh, we got retreats all over the world. We're not famous, but we are known. Because what's being done here is not being done by me. We're here and we're doing the things, but this is not our doing. I would never take credit for any of this. So the lesson here is the 3 pillars. There is self-empathy, where we care about how we feel. We get curious enough to ask the questions that need to be asked so that we can get the information that we need to be able to move forward. And self-love is realizing that it's only us that is responsible for what is going on, fully and totally. Whether that's happiness or sadness or lack or fear. That's coming from us and no one else. And as soon as you take full, complete accountability and responsibility for that, you will be able to move into self-trust and do the things that you know you can do and that you want to do. You want to do them. You do. But you got to move into that trust and let it happen because you're the only thing standing in your way. Okay.